Welcome to The Watcher. I'm your cult leader, Tom Pot, and I just watched the finale of Moon Knight. And I kind of talked last week about how Moon Knight has sort of fallen into more Marvel tropes than I expected. And after episode 5, there was no way that episode 6, the finale, would ever top it. And I was right. But I did think this was a satisfying finale. I think it was better than some of the other Marvel finales, even though it still fell into some of the familiar grooves that those episodes have fallen into. And for a show that we kept hearing was like, not like the other Marvel stuff, it's kind of a shame to see it fall into some of the bad patterns of the shows. But I do think there was a lot of good here. Of course, the question is, I call it a finale. Season finale? Or series finale? I don't know. We'll get into that towards the end. But we pick up, interesting basically, where episode 4... well, it didn't end, but where episode 4 was at some point, where now Mark's body is, of course, still in the tomb, having been shot by Harrow, and he's being dragged out of the waters. And his followers pick up the Ushabti of Abbott, and they leave the scarab that they used to find that Ushabti on Mark's corpse. Which, there's a moment where it's really, like, hinting, like, hey, Jake Lockley, where he's like, oh, is there anyone else in there, or something like that, where it's like, come on, man. Like, they hinted at Jake Lockley so hard here that if there was any chance they weren't doing it, people were going to be really pissed. But what in finding her tomb, Harrow's staff is now transformed into a kind of a deadlier weapon, as we see later on. As we pick up with Harrow, also of course in that tomb was Layla, who we haven't seen in a few weeks now. She has waited until his father was kind of cleared off, and then she goes over to Mark's body and mourns him. And she picks up the scar which was left on his chest, because of course that's going to lead to Harrow, because Harrow has the Ushabti, and she seems to want to revenge Mark and intends to follow Harrow to get it. We see Harrow then stopped at, it seems to be like some sort of security control point. I thought first it was a border, but I think it was just a security checkpoint. And he uses his staff. I thought he used it in a few different ways here. It looked like he took possession of a few people or something. Or at least got someone to join him. I was like, man, Loki would have been so proud seeing someone use his staff to possess people like the first Avengers with him. But no, he apparently killed a lot of the guards, and Layla intends to kill him because she's snuck away with his followers and has a knife ready to stab Harrow. But one of the other dead people speak to her. That's right. A dead guard is like, hey, it's me, Taret, the hippo god we saw in the last few episodes, as he's trying to give a message to Layla from Mark, and that Mark is trying to return to life, and he needs Kanchi, and to do that she has to go and break his Ushabti in the Temple of the Gods. The Temple of the Gods, of course, we saw a couple of weeks ago now, when Kanchi was cast out and imprisoned. It's a good thing they did set up, because there was a lot of the Temple of Gods in this episode, and it becomes quite pivotal. But the Temple of the Gods is where Harrow is going, wouldn't you know? So it's pretty handy that was the case, and because of that, she carries on after Harrow, because she also needs to get a new Ushabti. So once they get there, they find that basically Harrow just is a bit of a boss here. He's just in the temple, just staring down the avatars of the other gods, not fully intimidated, just putting them down, like no problem to him. And as this is all going on, he smashes the Ushabti of Ammit, freeing her, bringing the big crocodile god to life, which was pretty cool. A lot of giant animals in this, more than you'd expect. Giant birds, giant hippos, giant alligators, or crocodiles, I guess. And she also then tells Harrow, basically, she gives him like this big speech that his scales are unbalanced. And he's like, I understand, I accept that whatever judgment the scale has for me. But then interestingly, she says, your scales are unbalanced not because of what you've done, because of what you're going to do for me, in service of me as my avatar. And he submits himself to her, and he becomes the avatar of Ammit. As this is going on, we see that Layla now has the Ushabti of Kanchi, and smashes it to awaken Kanchi, who comes out and immediately is trying to convince Layla to be his avatar. And she's like aggressive against the age. She's like, no way, man, I saw what you did to Mark. You think I want that? No fucking way. But because of that, Kanchi was forced to act alone. And we see that he basically has blocked the path Ammit wants to go on. So it seems like we're going to have a big old fight of the gods, appropriately titled Gods and Monsters for this episode. But what happened to Mark? It's his show after all. Well, last we saw him, he was in the afterlife. And I was going to say in the moonlight. He was dancing in the moonlight as much as I'm sure he wishes that he's actually in a field of reeds in the duet. He's finally at peace. He can't. It was a kind of a sad moment that was quite nice as well, where he's just standing in the field of reeds. He doesn't hear any voices. He just finally feels peace and silence. But he seems disappointed that Stephen is no more. And because of that, he rushes from the reeds and immediately finds himself in the sands of the duat, which of course where the souls that have been cast out of the afterlife or not made it are. And he finds Stephen's body. And he starts to show remorse and says that Stephen is the only superpower he ever really had. Which is not like, oh, bit of self-love in there. That's good, isn't it? He begins to solidify in the sand though. So yeah, sorry. It was a nice message, but you know, you're still going to die seemingly. And they start to solidify in the sands, and seemingly that would be it. But then the gates of Osiris that they're trying to get to, I guess it was, they open. And because of that, they're both free and they embrace each other, give a nice big hug as they go through the gates. Seems like a 1 second they're going to be, you know, cast into the sands once more. There's a massive like sandstorm or wave of sand, and then Tarret stops that from she blocks it with her both, which is like, whee! Again, I'm not sure is Tarek good at a job, but hey, it works. It works for our heroes. And yeah, as this is all happening, there is still fighting in the temple, of course. Kanchi and Amit have begun to fight. As a result, though, Kanchi was in the middle of this battle with Amit, and Stephen and Mark have gone through the door, meaning they're now put back into their earthly body. And Kanchi senses that Mark is back and he can become Moon Knight once more. So he basically kind of flashes out of that fight and ends up by Mark's side, and he makes a deal with Mark, telling him pretty much what we thought he had told him before, which is that he will release him once this is over, basically. And because of that, they both make their way back again to the Temple of Gods. Layla is then told by another avatar that they need to get Amit into a human host, I guess it was, which is what happened already, I think. But yeah, Layla becomes an avatar of Tarret with a bit of skepticism at first. She says temporarily, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. But she insists that she has a costume in mind for her as well, and we're like, ooh. And she does have a costume in mind for her, because we see she's got these awesome kick-ass wings. Really, actually, I have to admit, it was a pretty cool costume. I really liked it. This was, as confirmed later on the Marvel website, the Scarlet Scarab, which is not normally a female hero. I think it actually is someone who started as a bit of a villain. Kind of a relatively obscure character. But it's nice to see them, you know, retrofit that for a character here, you know. And yeah, I guess it also continues the tradition of like, hey, it's the last episode, we need a good costume. And yeah, I've seen other people complain online. They're like, oh, it's another bait and switch from Marvel saying the show is about this person and it's actually about this person. And it's like, I mean, it was about Mark more than anything. I mean, like Layla was in 3 episodes, maybe 4. And yeah, it was like, I thought this character was actually very well done. I really liked Layla in the show overall by the end of it. And it was funny because at the start I was kind of complaining, but I actually found her to be very likable, and I like her superhero costume and her superhero identity. As we find out later, she is an Egyptian superhero, which is something cool as well, because of course all these heroes seem to be like, yeah, I'm from New York, I live in New York, you know. So it's nice to have kind of someone on the other side of the world as well. But I do wonder like what her long term, you know, thing is. I don't know, we'll have to see. I might speculate on that in a minute. But at this moment, again, we've had one Marvel trope of getting the costume in the last episode. Here we have a trope of the sky lasers. It's back. Harrow has climbed the pyramid and he's using his staff to call on his followers to judge everyone. I will say, pretty weak sky laser. So, you know, I'll give him points to that. But he is just basically on the top of a pyramid glowing a staff. And people can see it. And he's seeing this as basically calling on his followers to lay siege and start judging people now. Mark arrives though at the foot of the temple and faces off against Harrow, and they fly through the air. Very dramatic comic booky fight here. It was like they were just flying through the air, beating the hell out of each other. Which yeah, I mean Harrow was fine. I guess he's already got Amit's power in him or something, because he kind of got belted around the place, but he was totally grand. But interestingly, like he was probably better off than Mark even after all that. But still, Kanchi and Amit are also fighting now. Interestingly, they have an ideological battle first, which is like, ooh, yeah, because this show is different. It's more intelligent than most Marvel shows, I guess. They're fighting, and one of them's like, oh, we both punish those who do evil. And Amit's like, well, I punish them before they commit it. And it's like, oh, shit. This is an ideological battle. Are we going to get deeper into philosophy? No, they become giant monsters and fight. It just becomes a giant like kaiju battle. I nearly said a giant Kanchi battle. That too. It's like a big kaiju battle in Egypt, though, that's just going on in the background for some of the episode. So yeah, that's where the morality and philosophy and ideologies, there we go, that's the word, that's what I was saying, get thrown out the window for a big fight, but grand, okay. So that's what's going on. Layla is using her wings. They're kind of really cool. They're like kind of a metallic wings that she's using to deflect Harrow's laser back at him. And now we have Steven and Mark, because of course, at the end of the last episode, we realised that Steven, because kind of realised like all the things Mark can do, I can do as well. So I guess that was how they explained like him just being class and everything now. But yeah, they're getting ready to battle, and they're pretty much interchangeably going from being Mr. Knight to Moon Knight. So they've got a real better handle on working together, which is cool to see. But it did make me kind of go like, I don't know, is there an advantage to being Mr. Knight over Moon Knight in this? The way they've presented it doesn't really seem like it. Seems like Moon Knight is the better option for a fight. But he's just racing into battle as Mr. Knight. Layla and Steven are attack Harrow's followers. Mr. Knight has seriously upped his game. He's using batons. He's beating the hell out of people. He's doing pretty well for himself, to be fair. Again, I don't think he's as good as Moon Knight, so I would say as Moon Knight. But sure. Him and Layla now face off against Harrow, and they're just double teaming, beating the absolute shit out of him. But of course, Harrow's like, well, I'll do something you would never do. I'll attack civilians. But Layla prevents this. We have that moment where she's like, are you an Egyptian superhero? And she says, I am. Which, I don't know, wasn't there like a big controversy recently at Egypt like not showing Doctor Strange? So might be a weird time to have that bit of like patriotism for Egypt. It's like, hey, we like gods, we like Marvel, but also, gay people. Oh, not great. So yeah, it's kind of an unfortunate time for Marvel, because yeah, it's been banned in Egypt, Doctor Strange, because of America Chavez's character. But yeah, hey, bit of a misplay. I think I'm probably the only one who thought of that, but sure. Anyway, as a result of all this going on, because of Layla's saving civilians, Mark is have to face Harrow alone and is seemingly about to lose. Harrow uses his staff and it begins extracting the power. It's like up to his chest, and then he blacks out. One more time. You get a moment where Amit is about to defeat Kanchi, and we have a great shot here actually earlier on where like it looks like Kanchi is about to fall to Amit, and it's like a kind of a Dutch angle that's kind of twisting and turning around as Harrow makes his way into Mark. It's like they're both losing at the one time. But as I said, he is blacked out, and wouldn't you know it, when he wakes up, Mark has an axe to the forehead of Harrow. Seemingly he's dead. He's not dead, but he looks pretty much defeated. And Mark is like, it wasn't me. And Steven's like, well, it wasn't me either. And Layla's also like, what the fuck was that? She doesn't say fuck, because of course apparently they're now denying there was ever any F words in this. Remember in one of the episodes where he smashed a glass, it sounded like he said it. Sounds like he tried to sneak it in, but Marvel were like, no, he didn't. So who is it? Ooh, I mean, it's Jake Lockley. Yeah, this is interesting, because it did feel like we expected that thing to happen and then have Lockley appear. And it may, I don't know, it led to a good moment at the end with a bit of a twist, but also basically the big final finale and action scene for your character and the defeat of your villain is now not shown on screen. Bit of a weird creative choice, but hey, it was fine, I guess. I did make the last fight scene just kind of a bit anticlimactic though, because you don't see how it ends, which is a bit of a shame, but sure. They take Harrow back to the Temple of Gods and they try a spell to bind Amit to Harrow's body. As we do this, Harrow's finger twitches. Hey, he's not dead, see? And the spell works and Amit becomes trapped in Harrow's body. So obviously that's what they meant earlier. Like she has to literally be in his body, not just his avatar, I guess. But speaking through Harrow, she says that she will never stop. And Kanchi's like, then you need to kill her, Mark. Kill them both, or Amit will escape. And Layla says, like, you don't have to do this, Mark. You have a choice now. And you don't have to listen to Kanchi. And he throws the blade aside and tells Kanchi that he can do it himself if he wants them dead. And then Kanchi releases Mark and Steven. Although, as we see later on, it's not that clear cut. Then we get a weird moment where he wakes up in a therapy office again as Steven with therapist Harrow, and he asks Harrow if he thinks Kanchi and Amit are real, which Harrow says he does not. And Mark becomes a dominant personality now, not Steven, and I ask him, what if I disagree? Harrow walks to behind his desk, leaving bloody footsteps behind him, and Mark wakes up now in his bed, having defeated Harrow, and sending Harrow to cast his own aspersions about reality, I suppose. And Steven and Mark now, as we said, interact interchangeably. Like there's literally, like when they're talking, it's just like Steven, Mark, and they're getting on very well. And as he then wakes up in his own bed, he's like, okay, let me get out of bed. And he's yanked back to the floor because he is restrained to the bed, as we remember from the first episode. And credits. But of course, it's Marvel. So we're not quite done at the credits. The credits don't mean the end. We don't call them the end credits anymore. We call them the pre-mid-credit scene or the pre-post-credit scene. And yes, we do have a post-credit scene, which is pretty interesting. So Harrow is seemingly in an asylum now. And a man speaking Spanish walks in and tells the nurse that he'll take him, and begins to push Harrow out of the asylum in a wheelchair. And he brings him to the back of a limo and throws him in. And there he finds Kanchi, who's looking fresh as fuck. He's like in a suit, he's like in a limo, it was like he's about to drop the hottest mixtape. And Kanchi's like there. Harrow's very smug. He's like, you can't hurt me now because you don't have an avatar, blah, blah, blah. Because you don't have Mark, la, 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 la. And he says to him, Mark thought I wanted Layla as his avatar. And that he really thought that they'd parted ways. But Mark has no idea how troubled he really is. And he knocks on the side of the limo, and the driver hears it to open up the driver's window to look back into the passenger section. This is very elaborate because I don't know the technical terms for this limo. I've never been in one. But he gets the limo driver's attention. He turns around, and wouldn't you know it, it looks like Mark Spector. But it is, in fact, as Kanchi introduces him, Jake Lockley, who turns around, pistol in hand, and shoots Harrow, seemingly dead. And then he drives off in the limo, whose license plate says Spectre. Not like the Bond Spectre, like Mark Spector. But it's, you know, it doesn't have enough letters because that's how license plates work. And then it ends. Dun, dun, dun. So yes, we did get Jake Lockley. And it's interesting for a few reasons. Let's talk about what could come next, because there was a bit of speculation this week, because on Twitter, I believe, the Moon Knight page and the Marvel page, originally I think they posted out, check out, like before it aired, it was like, oh, check out this like trailer for what's coming up in Moon Knight series finale, and then they reissued the tweet saying season finale. Oscar Isaac has said there's no definitive plans to do another season. It was a one and done as far as he's concerned for now. But also, if you weren't confident to come back, why would you end it like that? Like, and also, I don't know what it means for like future installments with Moon Knight. Like, if he is to come back, like, it's just going to be that, you know, he's like normal aside from, you know, Kanchi. He controls one of his personalities, a personality he's seemingly not fully aware of. It's very confusing to a certain degree. And also kind of feels like, I mean, Mark can remember creating Steven, so he can't remember creating Jake. Did Mark not create Jake? Did Kanchi shatter his mind so he could create Jake himself? As we said, Jake is the most violent and angry of his personas before. And that's seemingly the case here, that he had no problem killing someone, even though the rest of the personalities have left that behind. It certainly seems to rule out Ethan Hawke coming back. And to be fair, I don't know why you would bring him back either. It feels like his story is pretty much done. Like, what would you do except the same thing again? Although then again, I think having an actor of his caliber could very easily, you know, endear them to bring him back, even if it wasn't the best choice story-wise. I guess from here, it's a question of where does Moon Knight go from here? And what is going to happen to the rest of this world? So, the question is, will Oscar Isaac have any interest in doing Moon Knight again? And when we say again, does that mean will he come back on TV? Will he come back in a movie? And I think he did name drop Midnight Suns. And I do think that would be a really cool way of doing it. You know, Moon Knight Suns are a more supernatural focused team in the Marvel Universe. I would love a team that's not the Avengers or the Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, that's just a little bit different. And I think Midnight Suns would be the perfect antidote to that. Of course, we're getting Blade in the MCU soon. I mean, you know, we could get Ghost Rider brought in. Werewolf by Night is getting a Halloween special. So there's plenty of stuff set up for that if you wanted to go that way. And that's something I'm kind of slightly worried about the latest Marvel stuff, where it does feel like they're setting up a lot, but they're not entirely sure what direction they're going yet. But with Moon Knight, it's like a character that, with this, it feels like their story isn't done. But it also feels like there's enough story that it's not ready to just put him on the big screen yet. So I assume there would be another season of the show. But also, I mean, you need to do a lot. Like, if you have to fill 6 episodes and we have to get, you know, the Jake Lockley character under Mark's control, we need a whole new 6 episodes, which is a lot to just basically, you know, bring Moon Knight to the status quo. I will also say, and this is, I think, a valid criticism that I've seen, we didn't really get a lot of Moon Knight, or Moon Knight being Moon Knight. You know, it wasn't like he was like a vigilante on the streets or anything like that. He was just in Egypt trying to figure out his identities, and yeah, we didn't get a lot of the Moon Knight persona. So it feels like there is a lot you could do with more Moon Knight. You could make it more in line with the comics and eventually have him take control of Jake Lockley and kind of get those 3 personalities to be under his command. But yeah, it definitely feels like the character is now not ready for the movies. But could Layla show up in the films? And I think it's a character that could totally work. I mean, it would cause the massive explanation of why not Moon Knight if she does just show up in a Marvel movie. But then again, it is early days. I mean, these are characters that might just stay in their own sandbox until way down the road. You know, much in the same way we didn't see the Guardians of the Galaxy show up in the Avengers until, you know, a good few years after in Infinity War or whatever. They could easily do that in Moon Knight and not have him show up in whatever the next Avengers sequel is, and then have him show up down the road further again. So it's an interesting one. It feels like they don't fully know where Moon Knight's going to go himself, and it feels like there's so much, there's a lot going on here, but it also feels like there's not a real urgency to bring this character into the mainline MCU. I suppose I guess he could make a cameo in something, but it also feels like they're in no rush to do that. They're happy just leaving him on his own for now, which I think makes it a kind of a strange inclusion for the rest of when you look at the rest of the Marvel TV shows, because it seems like all the other characters they're set on bringing into the MCU in some form at some point, whereas Moon Knight is just a strange one. And I guess you don't want to rush it when you have someone the caliber of Oscar Isaac, but I don't know. And yeah, I mean, certainly I would imagine this will get another season if everyone is down. Maybe they were lucky to get Oscar Isaac as is. I'm sure he has a very busy schedule, so trying to get him for a second season now, you know, now that things are opening up a bit after COVID, who knows? He might be hard to book down. But I could totally see them returning to Moon Knight as a TV show. Who knows when? I mean, I think they're just kind of treating it as a limited series, and they can always come back to it if they want to. I don't know if they have a firm plan yet. Maybe I'm wrong, but time will tell, I suppose. I guess the final thing would be kind of my thoughts on Moon Knight in general. And I will say, yeah, this was the shortest finale in the MCU. It was the shortest episode of Moon Knight as well, I imagine. It was a very breezy episode, and I do think that's what I always say about the finales. The finales are not dense. They're meant to kind of give some degree of closure to something in the short term, and also leave possibilities for the long term. This left a lot of closure for the first season and a lot to explore in the second season, which isn't really the case. It feels like a lot of the other shows kind of set up like, hey, that's where we pick up next time they're in a movie. This one, it's like, well, if you come back and do another season, we'll do this. But as a finale, I thought it was maybe one of the better finales. I think it was probably somewhere maybe in the middle, actually. I did like the Hawkeye finale. I had problems with the WandaVision finale altogether. I mean, I don't think any of the finales have been amazing, but I do think this is one of the better ones. Again, it did feel like a very Marvel finale, which is a shame because following episode 5, it was even more noticeable because episode 5 felt like something that, you wouldn't get in a lot of the other shows, and it felt like something that was really excellent and not like the other comic TV shows Marvel have done, which, have been a little bit formulaic in places. So, what that means for Moon Knight, I suppose, is that I thought it was fine. Well, imagine doing that big long video and then just saying, yeah, it was okay. I would say I feel like if I weren't doing the videos for this, I would not have had the same level of urgency to watch this show. Maybe around the middle is where it kind of felt to me like it had settled into a rut. I'm not entirely sure the way they went about the character. The whole mystery elements is good for the model of getting people to come in week in, week out. But I don't know if it was the best choice from a narrative perspective. Again, I do think it worked for episode 5 being as amazing as it was. But it did feel like the rest of the show was just not really sure of what it wanted to be. And now that we're like at the end of these shows with the new characters, you'd imagine it was like, hey, this is our character. Now this character is ready to go wherever else you want to take him. And really, at the end of this, it's like this character doesn't feel like he's fully ready yet either, because there is the whole Jake Lockley of it all, and Mark isn't under the thumb of Kanchi, or at least he thinks he's not. So I don't know. I think in that way it felt a little bit unsatisfying at the end, and I think as a show, maybe it just... I don't know if it fully lived up to its potential for me. That's just me. Then again, I think what's great about these shows is that they have all been relatively different. I've seen like so many people say this is their favorite show, and I'm like, that's my least favorite. And I've seen other people that have like their like shows that were my favorites towards the middle of the pack. So it's nice to see such differing opinions, and it speaks to a little bit of variety in the Marvel TV universe, even if a lot of them fall into the same kind of traps and tropes. But either way, that has been our Watcher series for Moon Knight. I don't know when we'll be back doing the Watcher. I guess when Miss Marvel comes out, if we don't do anything in between then. Of course, we're doing more Marvel stuff for Rewatcher and the Multiverse of Badness very soon. Hopefully very soon. It's a lot of work, but I cannot wait to release that. It's really good stuff, and it's going to be a lot of fun with some very special guests. But either way, I've been your cult leader, Tom Pod. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. If you don't want to miss more madness from this channel, be sure to subscribe. Either way, I've been your cult leader, Tom Pod. Please come back next time, whenever that is, because remember, I'll be watching. Take care.